Ari Roseman. I'm here with another fun-filled episode at 401k Podcast. Next week's topic, we're going to talk about how 401k plan sponsors can be proactive, solutions, suggestions, all that kind of jazz. Of course, first things first, that 401ksite.com, information on our events. As this episode drops, we will be in Kansas City for that 401k conference, so too late to sign up for that one. Anaheim, June the 5th, Thursday. And pretty soon I got to work on it, get that side up for Milwaukee in September. Then August is going to turn around, and right then and there, we're actually going to have the 2026 schedule, and we'll come up with some ideas for events for 2026. Got to get my scheduler there, my son Jason, involved, and figure out where we can go to and all that stuff. And, quite honestly, we've been to, so many parks, so we're not, set on any place. I think as we see now, I haven't raised the sponsorship prices or the attendance prices in the 7 years that we've done this event. And so cost is a concern. There are a couple cities that I'd wanted to go to this year that I looked at the pricing that we've been to previously, like Atlanta, as well as Colorado, and just the pricing just didn't make any sense. So we'll look at, some other places. Washington has always been a place where I want to hold an event for, obviously that's where I went to law school, so it'd be like a kind of like a homecoming for me. There are obviously other glaring omissions that we haven't been to. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. I'm going to try to avoid cities where I tried to hold an event and the interest wasn't there. So sorry, Detroit, and we'll see what happens. So let's get to the topic at hand. Well, actually, before we get to the topic at hand, I've been talking about the third book for a very, very long time. Probably 2 years now. I was going to do a third book. The third book, the idea was to come up with some, sayings in my life, kind of like rules that I followed, and, just write a book about it. Stuff in my life, stuff in the law, all that kind of stuff. And last 2 years, 3 years, just been too busy. Finally found the solution on how to write it and write it quickly. And it's worked wonders. This will be my best book, third time's the charm. Working on it. We'll see how long we can take it, how much more I can write. I don't think it's fair to charge, $10 or for a Kindle, it's like 100 pages. We want to write a nice substantive book, 200-300 pages. We'll figure out how we do it. It's going really well. Been writing a little bit more about my personal life, struggles that I had as a kid and this and that, and trying to, be a little bit uplifting, even though maybe the stories from my childhood weren't so uplifting. But, it's really a third chance at a book. The first one, wasn't happy with it. I gave somebody I knew to edit the book, and I think she did a terrible job editing it. Maybe one day I'll take a look at it again and maybe come up with a remastered edition. Second one, I liked a little bit better. I think it was kind of too short of a book. This one will be just right, as Goldilocks would say. And we'll see how long it will be, maybe available this summer or this fall. We'll see how long it goes, how long the book will be. Should be some interesting couple months with announcements on it. Right now, I think the title is Now Do You Care? My wife hates the title, but I do, and it's that phrase is from my law school days, and there'd be explanation as to why that is. And the 1996 movie The Fan, that's where that line comes from. But anyway, let's get to the topic at hand. 401k plan sponsors, they really, have to understand that not only is the plan supposed to be a great benefit, but it has some negative connotations if you're not proactive in, maintaining it. If they ignore the 401k plan, it can be used as some sort of weapon because of the potential liability exposure from litigation by participants or penalties from the IRS and DOL. Obviously, the recent Supreme Court case makes it a lot easier for plan participants to sue. They really don't have to meet much of a burden to get the case not thrown out. And really, why should plan sponsors be proactive? Obviously the same reason people vaccinate against themselves, against measles, mumps, polios, rubella, chickenpox, and the flu. Uh, this is based on an article that I wrote many years ago, and obviously, thanks to the COVID shot, people are, and RFK Jr., people are more aware of vaccines and maybe anti-vax. I'm a big fan of vaccines, always have. If you don't care about, that's my opinion. If you don't want to vaccinate yourself, that's your opinion. I really, I think I'm writing a chapter in my book. The people who have, um, it's along the lines of the people who have the strongest problems with my opinion have the opinions that I really don't care about. Because I just had a thing with somebody locally where I wrote a blind item, and clearly he thought it was about himself, and that's a guilty conscience. But I'm a big fan of vaccines. I wish I had the chickenpox vaccine. I've had, what are we, 6, 7 COVID shots. I've never had COVID. I just, took the shingles shot because I had chickenpox, and I don't want anything remotely to that again. So as soon as I was 50, I got it. Recently, Ricky Henderson died from pneumonia. I got that pneumonia shot. And now that somebody at my local Jersey Mike's had hepatitis A, I didn't eat there, but somehow maybe I'm just going to take the hepatitis shot too. I don't know. I'll let you know. But I think the people, plan sponsors really need to be proactive. Um, you know, Obviously, plan sponsors that's going to be proactive is less likely to have catastrophic plan errors and threats of litigation. From, the 27 years of experience that I've had, it is the plan sponsor who wasn't proactive and aware of their role as a plan fiduciary that was far more likely to pay tens of thousands of dollars in penalties, corrective contributions, substantial legal bills, because they were just, proactive. They were not proactive; they were reactive. You want to be laid back in life, and I think at this point in my life, I'm kind of laid back. I used to be on top of things in terms of being fiery and all that kind of stuff, and now I'm chilling. Um, I'm a lot more mellow. That's great, but being laid back as a 401k plan sponsor is a recipe for disaster. Even if you have a TPA or risk attorneys, you are on the hook for liability in connection with anything in the plan because you're a plan fiduciary. It's not a piece of furniture. You can't, set it and forget it, or what people try to do with, uh, any other, household item. Our house right now is like full of stuff from Costco that we haven't opened. Uh, Bought a lot of stuff for the next house, and right now I don't know. I'm for the second house, and I don't know when we're ever going to get that second house. Trying to time the market and all that kind of stuff, and of course, trying to time the market, you got to worry about the stock market because if you have assets in that, and I got crypto and all that kind of stuff. So, 401k plan is no different than a sophisticated piece of machinery. Um, and, if you don't use it and use it correctly, it's going to break down, just like a piece of machinery. Plan sponsors have to review the fee disclosures. Since 2012, you're now aware of how much the plan providers are charging you. The fact that you get these disclosures and all the fees is just really not enough. You actually have to go out and benchmark the fees. I always talk about having a contractor. My wife really liked, and we didn't check the pricing on them, and we found that their work at a certain point to be efficient. And then when we did shop around looking for somebody else, we realized that they were expensive, and that was on us. But when you're a plan fiduciary and you're responsible for the assets of plan participants, you don't have that luxury of paying more. You have a duty to pay only reasonable plan expenses. That's really a problem. And so the only way to find out whether our fees are reasonable is to check what other providers charge for similar service. You don't have to pick the cheapest. It just has to be reasonable. You want to pay for a 316 service and all the bells and whistles of the website and all that kind of stuff, and you want to pay extra, well, you can do that. But it just has to be reasonable for the services provided. Another thing is have your plan reviewed. The problem with your 401k plan when it comes to compliance errors is that many times errors are only discovered years later when there's an IRS or DOL audit or when there's a change in TPA. I always liken it to the movie Casino, where Nicky Santoro and Lefty, uh, Sam Ace Rothstein, the real person was Lefty Rosenthal. Sam Ace Rothstein talking about, when they meet in the desert, and there was a voiceover about how there's so many holes in the desert because that's where problems are buried, which means dead bodies and all that stuff. And that's no different with a lot of plan errors. They're buried. We don't know about it until we discover it on an audit or when a new TPA takes over and says, "Oh, wait a second, that top heavy test you thought you passed about 2-3 years ago, well, they goofed up the previous TPA and you owe $8,000 in a top heavy contribution." You never get a good surprise. Nobody says, "By the way, we checked, and you're going to get back $10,000 or something." The Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. You don't never get a surprise like that from the new TPA. You always get, by golly, we found something and it's going to cost you. And detecting errors, sooner rather than later may allow you some more cost-effective corrective measures. Failed the deferral test, you have the opportunity to refund excess deferrals. HEs don't like it, but it's a really cheaper option for plan sponsors. But if you don't correct it in a timely fashion, you're going to be out of luck. That's why, I always do this retirement plan tune-up, which, of course, in the 15 years that I've offered it, probably, 5-6 plan sponsors have paid the $750 fee. Because, again, plan sponsors are reactive. They are not proactive. And, of course, it's not only important to detect the errors. It's important that you actually fix the errors. If plan sponsors given a bill on what it would be to cost to fix an error, and they don't want to pay for it. They go through what I call the audit gamble, where they're going to gamble. They're not going to fix the error, and they're going to gamble they don't get caught on an IRS DOL audit. I think people know I love Las Vegas. I haven't gambled, and I've been to Las Vegas again and again and again. We had a conference there in, 2022? Hopefully we'll have a conference again in 2026. We're looking at the schedule. When the Rangers come to town against the Golden Knights, we'll probably do something in January, maybe. I don't know. I hope. But I've gone to Vegas, a few times. I wish I could have gone to Napa, but, the schedule just didn't work out. I really would have liked to go to Napa. But I love Vegas. The thing about Vegas is I haven't gambled in there in 23 years. It's just not something I like to do. So I don't gamble in Vegas, and I don't like to gamble on an audit. As an attorney, my rules are kind of like, got to follow what the Internal Revenue Code and ERISA says, and that's my advice to plan sponsors. This is going to cost you to fix it, and this is my advice to fix it. I don't tell plan sponsors, hey, by the way, that 5,500, you got about 6-8 months to go, statute of limitations, don't fix it. That's not me. And listen, I'm not for everybody. Sometimes people don't like that. Many years ago, there was a bank there for 20 years. They screwed up the bonus comp, and they owed corrective contributions. And I told them to go to VCP, and they found an attorney who was going to do self-correction. Well, good luck to them. And it's important that a plan sponsor stress the importance of enrollment pledge education meetings. Most plan enrollment plan education meetings are as uncomfortable and uninteresting as a funeral. I'm not a big fan of funerals. Really not a big fan of funerals. That's just I'm not a big fan of it. I don't really know anybody who's really a big fan of it. I went to a funeral, I think in January. Friends that I ran into in Florida at a hockey game, found that his mother was sick, mother died, and I went to the funeral because I saw him a few days ago, and in Florida, I kind of feel kind of weird not going to the funeral. Knew the lady, lovely woman, whatever, but like I said, I've seen enrollment meetings that are worse than the funeral, and believe me, that was a nice funeral. May she rest in peace. Lovely, lovely woman. Um, she was a Holocaust survivor as a kid. Uh, was in Russia and all that. Survived in Russia, but her father was killed in the Holocaust. But the point is that plan sponsors, despite the fact that a lot of enrollment meetings aren't very interesting, you got to make sure that plan participants are engaged in the process, getting enough education to make informed investment decisions with these enrollment meetings. And, because these enrollment meetings are all about offering you protection from RISA 404C. Now, back in the day, 20 years ago, plan sponsors went out of their way not to have these enrollment meetings. And I think they understand now more the function of these meetings, that it's there to protect themselves, not to, help to, have the participants goof off on time. This actually is for the plan sponsor's benefit. And you need to hire an advisor who's going to work with you, pick funds, based on an IPS, review it, replace it, take minutes, all that kind of stuff, and make plan participants better informed to make informed investment decisions in order to have that protection under ERISA 404C. Next, this is something I don't think plan sponsors do. Actually go get input from employees. I've worked in the retirement plan business, again, 27 years. I rarely have plan sponsors engage with participants and try to get their input on the 401k plan. It's like they don't care. They don't want plan participants to know anything. They don't care about their opinion. And I think that's ridiculous because a 401k plan is an employee benefit. And, believe me, my wife and I, a 401k plan is a big deal when you're changing jobs. How good is the plan? Where is the plan at? All that kind of stuff. Do you offer a match? All this kind of stuff. These are important decisions, and you may not, you as an employee considering a change, you may not go somewhere else because their 401k plan, may have like an eligibility issue or whatever that may require you to sit out a year or whatever it is. I think it's important to get input for employees. I'm not saying that get the employees to serve on a fiduciary committee. I like to get their input. How do you like the website? I worked at a law firm plan. I always talk about the Fakakta law firm. And they're terrible for 1K plan. And the HR director, I helped her fix it, but in the end, she really didn't care about my input. I wasn't crazy about their website. They were using all that old. It was like an old Relias mechanism website. And of course, I was the ERISA expert. She didn't ask for my input about changing the plan over to an insurance company platform. I was kind of ticked off by that. And that's why I've been mentioning it for like the last 15 years. I'll probably mention in my book, just because I like to be right. And it's only that I also have a big chip on my shoulder from my time at that firm. It was such a, I always harp on experiences that I wouldn't say traumatic, but when people make you feel like you're worth nothing, you're going to want to remember that you are worth something. I like, I don't like to rub success in the nose of people I like. I like to rub my success in the nose of people who did terrible things to me. I just wrote in the book, whatever, I'm not a cruel person except to the people who've been cruel to me. And that's just my experience. I think it's important, if you really value your employees, to get their input on the 401k plan and see where it's at. If they don't like the website, if they don't like the funds, or whatever it is, those are key things to focus on. And I'm really not surprised plan sponsors don't do that, because plan sponsors don't have empathy for employees, at least most of them. They don't care of what they think. But I've run across a lot of plan sponsors that actually do. Last but not least, I think it's important to implement features that just make complete sense. Choice is a really good thing, and too much choice is a bad thing. But allowing participants to make after-contributions is a no-brainer. There are plans out there that may still not offer it. That's a big deal when we go to the Roth only catch up for HCEs. Um, you know, that's something that really you should have. Um, and there are other methods. Automatic deferrals. Maybe that would be a good idea to have. But they're just if you have a low participation rate, you need to juice up the numbers or get more people involved. An automatic enrollment feature may be for you, and these are the considerations. Always look and always think and always consult with your TPA. They, know a thing or two about 401k plans. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of that 401k podcast. And again, go to that 401ksite.com. Anaheim, Milwaukee up soon. August will be around in like 3 months, and we'll figure out what we'll go for 2026. Really interested about that. My son is even more interested. He's like, "You gonna go back here? You're gonna go back there?" He talked about St. Louis. I think we may not go to St. Louis next year just because we were just going to be in Kansas City, but or so we got. I'm interested in talking to Cincinnati. Go back there. I've been there before. I actually enjoyed that city. Pittsburgh, I've been to the ballpark a couple times. That might be an interesting thing to go to. Pirates, unfortunately, are not that popular. But we'll see what happens. Maybe I go to a weekend at PNC Park and we do a Steelers event or something like that. I don't know. But it should be interesting. And like I said, I think the NHL schedule comes up in July as well, and so we'll figure out what we're going to do about Las Vegas. But anyway, tune in next week for another fun-filled episode of that 401k podcast. Take care. Bye.